Folks, welcome to this week's Ag Report. This week, I've got Rodney Schronk, local farmer, cotton farmer, grain farmer, joining us, and we're going to talk about cotton. You know, cotton, you may have heard, is the fabric of our lives, keeps us warm, goes into a lot of products. You use it every day when you buy that cup of coffee and you spend that money. There's lots of, cotton in lots of different things. So, Rodney, I appreciate you joining with us, and let's talk this year's cotton crop a little bit. We talked with folks early in the season and kind of had a hard start to the year.
That would be an understatement. I've been farming nearly 30 years now, and this was by far the toughest start to a cotton crop that I've endured. We had a lot of cool, extremely wet weather, and the seed just had a difficult time getting started. The soil temperature needs to be a certain temperature to get cotton seed to sprout and growing, and it started that way for a few days, and then it dropped back down, and disease and bacteria just attacked that seed and made it very difficult for that young plant to get growing. Throughout Central Texas, there was just a lot of cotton replanted and late in the year because we continued to stay wet through early June. So a lot of cotton was replanted in June, which is unheard of to be planting cotton that time of year. But yes, you're correct. It was an extreme struggle.
Which, cotton, I guess that's a little bit of an irony because late in the season, cotton is kind of a woody crop. It's very hardy and it's hard to, get processed at the end of the year, residual back into the ground. And so starting it, the little irony there that it's so delicate and so tender, doesn't have much vigor to come out of ground. So, so starting the year off like that, I know that that's hard. You got extra inputs and things like that. Middle of the season, what kind of growing conditions, at what point was it going along? And I think for every producer, no matter the crop, you have a point where you start to look at it one day and you go, hey, wow, that's looking better. That kind of looks all right. And I know with myself, maybe my attitude kind of changes a little bit. You kind of, have a renewed sense of, hey, maybe we're going to make it.
So that's an interesting way to put it. So to give you a time perspective, we planted our cotton the first week of April, most of it. And that's typically 1st of April to the middle is a normal time frame. So we typically expect our cotton to be setting fruit, which is putting on bolls. It'll make cotton by June. And June of this year, the cotton was still very small, like this, maybe this tall in early June, and just looked horrendous. We got to July 1st, and to be honest with you, John Paul, I probably would have just done away with my cotton crop. I really thought there was no hope whatsoever. And then July come along, the weather warmed up, and we just got some very timely rains. And you started to think, well, maybe we'll make a little cotton out of this. And then we get to August, which is normally our drought and horrible, dry, hot time of year. And cotton likes warm, hot weather. There's no doubt about it, as long as it has a little moisture. And so we got to August, and the weather was hot, and we continued to get some small timely rains. And I would say about the middle of August, 1st of August, it started to look like we were going to have a crop. Kind of that what you're talking about. I started to have a little bit of a smile on my face, but I was hesitant. History just says that cotton that struggled as much as it did would never be very good. So really, until we put a harvester in those fields, I never really had that big grin on my smile till September when we started. And that's when I got the grin, when we got the harvester out there and got started on it, and just couldn't believe what the good Lord had provided with such a difficult start. It's kind of one of those lessons in life I've learned. You always hear the story or the saying is just don't ever give up. And this was one of those years where not giving up really paid dividends. It was amazing. That tree, as you called it, which is what that is. Cotton plant is a tree that will grow forever as long as it doesn't get a freeze. It was amazing how it came out of that stunted early growth and turned into such a beautiful, productive crop.
It's good you use the word timely and just enough, adequate, amounts, because a lot of folks, they think, well, more water is better. And like both of us have had this spring, I had quality issues on wheat because of too much water, too much of a good thing. And it brings to mind, I know that I have talked with older producers years ago that remember as kids the 1950s and the epic drought. And there was a year in there that they remembered as kids because it was an epic year. They had just enough rain, and they remember their parents making a really good cotton crop and paying bills. And maybe that was the first time that they got new shoes to go back to school, or they got electricity brought to the farm because they had some extra money in there. And so you're right, that it's just enough. Doesn't have to be a whole lot, just the right time, the right amount, the right temperatures. And, it's good you bring in the blessings of that, because, that's all out of our control. We don't have a greenhouse that we can turn on the heat or turn on the air conditioner or turn on the water or any of those kind of things. It is out of our hands. It was out of your hands in June when you dropped that seed in the ground, and, there's nothing more that you can do. So I certainly understand, the happiness of getting in that combine, that harvester, and, you're kind of like, really, is it that really what I'm seeing here? Is this just a good spot? So tell us about, the harvest. Yield was a little better. How about quality? That plays a big part in it.
So there we go back to the timely small rains, and we were fortunate. Rain is cotton's worst enemy. Once that bowl of cotton opens up and exposes the white lint that you and I know is a cotton ball or the thread for a pair of blue jeans. So it's very susceptible, no different than if you put your jeans in the washing machine every day and wash them every single day. They tend to fade and shrink. That's what happens to our cotton crop if we get a lot of rain. We were very blessed this year that when that cotton started opening in late August, that we just had very little rain. And so that made for a very white, bright colored cotton, which is one of the quality matrix that they look at, is the color of it. They also look at the diameter or the thickness of the fiber and how strong it is. Both of those were extremely good this year. And then the one that we struggle with personally a lot is the leaf. It's very difficult to separate the leaf from the lint. And it was a year where the leaves fell off the cotton plant very easily, or more so than normal. And so normally we get pretty hefty docks for there being leaf in the lint. And that was pretty minimal this year. So yes, the quality, since I've been farming, this probably was the best quality crop I've ever had. Quantity wise, it was extremely good, but I wouldn't call it a record crop for us. You get a little further south of Southern Hill County and further south of that, I'm going to say that probably there's some farmers using the term record crop. Wow. We get up in Northern Hill County and probably over into Ellis, maybe a little bit too much rain, and it just never quite completely recovered, but still very close to a record crop in this part of the state.
You talk about that trash a little bit, and to expand on that for the folks that maybe don't quite, get that, that's been an interesting thing. I think over the years, when I was a kid, you had trailers and strippers, and you had lots of trash in there. That's just the way that it was. And the gin, that was part of their job, was separating that trash out. Now we've had, technological advances. They went from that to, strippers, and then they added bowl extractors to the strippers. That became a big thing. And that's a lot of reason I think you see some old strippers parked. They didn't have those extractors on them. They became obsolete, and you couldn't afford to run those things because of the dockage you talk about in there. So just briefly, share with us, how is that, continued on with the newer strippers? Are they able to really kind of clean things up for you if you're having trouble in the field?
So technology has improved, as you said. When I first started farming, basically we just removed the bowls and blew them into a trailer, and the gin did everything. Today's cotton strippers or harvesters, they have a actual small gin on the back of the cotton stripper that actually starts to remove some of what we call trash, which is the things that have very little value. The burr that wraps around the cotton, the leaf, some of the twigs and stalks. It'll start to remove a little of that. To give you an idea, when you take a bale of cotton to the cotton gin that hasn't been gin yet, it'll weigh roughly 1,500 pounds, say. About 30 to 40% of that bale is actually lint. The remaining 60 to 70% is actually the seed and what we call trash, the residue. And so you don't get any of the seed out with the cotton strippers or pickers, but you do remove a lot of the burr and the leaf and twigs. You get a lot of that, begin to get a lot of that out of there, but you still, as I said, 60 to 70% of what you carry to the cotton gin is still actually byproducts. And one of the more interesting things, John Paul, that I'm sure you're aware of, but nowadays there's actually beginning to be somewhat of a market for what we call the trash, the burrs and the leaves. A lot of the gins today are using that and composting it to use for fertilizer. There's some cattle people use it to mix into their feeds as a filler. So as things have progressed, agriculture's found ways to make use of things that were just thrown away years ago, thought of as trash. And right. Today it's not. So we take the lint, and money is made out of lint from cotton balls, your jeans and socks. It's amazing all the byproducts that come from cotton. But now we use the seed a lot, which always has as a high value, very good cattle feed for dairies and commercial cattlemen. And then, like I said, the actual burr, what we called trash years ago, is actually being used for compost, for flower beds, and actually some cattle feed.
Yep.
So the technologies have really come a long ways, and American agriculture is very inventive in the way they come about finding ways to make use of things.
Yep. It's a great way to tie it all together. So if you're watching this today and maybe you're sitting in, an apartment dorm or dormitory or sitting in town and you're thinking, well, other than my clothes, how does cotton touch me? Well, there, like Rodney said, in your money, that flower that you're planting in that flower pot, there may be some compost from that gin trash that got put back in there. You go to that store to get that milk. Pretty confident there's going to be some cottonseed cake or something or other in that ration that fed those dairy cattle. So it comes back to you in a lot of different ways. Rodney, I really appreciate you taking time. I certainly understand busy time of year is always lots of stuff going on. Appreciate you sharing your expertise and, kind of grinning a little bit with us and talking about the good quality and better than expected crops. So
you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy doing it.
Yes, sir. Y'all take care now.